and good morning for those in our friends in America. My dear colleague and friend, member of Knesset, Alon Schuster, our dear colleagues from the United States and members of Parliament from Greece and Cyprus, Greg and Alex from the Middle East Forum, distinguished experts and dear friends. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for taking part in this important, I think, one of a kind discussion, because at least as far as I know, this is the first time the Knesset has ever hosted an event like this, an interparliamentary briefing on a strategic topic together with counterparts from these different countries. Since the horrible massacre on October 7th, the entire region has been evolving. Regardless of the outcome of the current tension between America and Iran, one thing is clear. Iran, that for years has spread violence and chaos and acted as the world's #1 exporter of terrorism, has been weakened militarily, economically, and diplomatically. Its proxies have been hit hard. Its economy is in ruins. Its people are fighting against the regime, undermining the Ayatollah's political control. But as we all understand, strategic vacuums do not remain empty. And Turkey is moving quickly to fill one. For years, the strategic conversation in Washington and in Jerusalem centered correctly on Iran. Today, however, we are dealing with a new challenge. Turkey is positioning itself as a central patron of radical Islamist movements across the region, especially those aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood. Turkey hosts Hamas leaders. It provides them political legitimacy and diplomatic protection. It seeks influence over Gaza. And at the same time, Turkey is expanding its military and political footprint across Syria, Iraq, Libya, Egypt, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Horn of Africa. What we are seeing is the Iranian Shiite axis being replaced with a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood one. This undermines stability, security, energy, and trade in the Middle East. A key difference, however, is that Turkey is partner of many Western nations and institutions. We all know that Turkey is a member of NATO, part of Europe, and has a close ties with the United States. A similar pattern is evident in the East Mediterranean. Turkey openly challenges the maritime rights of Greece and Cyprus. It disrupts energy explorations and infrastructure planning. It seeks to redirect trade and connectivity projects away from frameworks that do not include Ankara. Energy routes, undersea cables, and commercial corridors are tools of influence. Projects linking Israel, Cyprus, and Greece are therefore strategic assets to counter Turkey's ambitions. This is the alliance we are discussing here today. The US, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus partnership is based on shared values and interests, democratic states that seeks peace, prosperity, and stability. In contrast with Turkey's diplomatic policies, the United States benefits from diversifying corridors and reliable partners. Europe benefits from secure energy and lawful maritime frameworks. Israel benefits from strategic depth and security cooperation. The West needs to make a choice, whether it reinforces its partners who play by shared rules and values, or whether it empowers actors to spread chaos and instability. It is this choice that will shape Eastern Mediterranean and the broader region for years to come. I look forward to learning from our experts here today and a fruitful discussion with our friends and colleagues from the various countries. Thank you so much, and member of Knesset, Alon Schuster.
Thank you, Ohad. Distinguished partners, MK Ohad Tal, United States representatives that will soon join us, Parliament members from Greece and Cyprus, guests and friends. We gather here at a critical strategic moment defined by both intense pressure and massive possibility. While the challenges of the past 2 years have been significant, they have also clarified the path we must take to ensure long-term regional stability. Over those 2 years, Israel has demonstrated its profound military capability. However, battlefield capability alone does not translate into political strength and leverage. We stand at a crossroad where we must choose to remain a military fortress or to become a vital, crucial regional hub. Our goal is to translate our operational strength into a stable political standing by positioning Israel not just as a security actor, but as a solution provider in energy security, climate, agriculture, and digital innovation. The trilateral alliance between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus is our anchor in this changing landscape. But for this partnership to be truly sustainable, it must rise above traditional defense and energy cooperation. We must build civilian resilience depth through social infrastructure, innovation, and trade. By embedding Israeli water technologies and agri-tech into the region, by sharing ideas and traditions through culture, and by enhancing mutual tourism, we can create real benefits for the publics of all three nations, fostering a resilience that can survive political crises and external shocks. True leadership is measured by what it builds, not just what it blocks. Our alliance must move beyond a narrative of containment of Turkish threat to a vision of connectivity between countries who share the same values and interests. Israel is a bridge, not a barrier. We have already demonstrated the potential through the Abraham Accords foundation we must now strengthen and expand. In an era of global competition, the trilateral path offers the most stable, democratic, and reliable route for connecting the Middle East to Europe. We must also look towards the broader horizon, the vision of IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, for example, is essential for our regional re-anchoring. However, the viability of this corridor is fundamentally linked to our partnership with Saudi Arabia. We must recognize that in the post-Gaza war environment, regional integration requires a credible political pathway regarding the Palestinian issue, one that must be conditioned on denouncing terror, implementing reforms, and acknowledging Israel. Integrating Palestinian participation into regional trade and value chains is not only a security necessity, but a requirement for the legitimacy and long-term viability of the entire regional architecture. The greatest risk we face is inaction. Delay in making strategic decisions risks us in exclusion in a region that is moving forward with or without us. Today, we affirm our commitment to this new direction, a pivot from managing conflict to building shared frameworks. By choosing connectivity and deep civilian partnership with Greece and Cyprus, we anchor Israel in an emerging order built on cooperation, innovation, and shared.
Thank you so much, Member Knesset Schuster. Greg from the Middle East Forum.
Thank you, Member Knesset Schuster, Tal, members of Congress, and also our esteemed representatives from the Greek Parliament and the Cypriot Parliament. So in preparing for today's event, a colleague asked me, Greg, how's planning going for the Eastern Mediterranean Caucus in the Knesset? And I said, well, we've got American congressmen, Israeli members of Knesset, Greek parliamentarians, and Cypriot MPs all together in the same room on the same page. And he looked at me and said, 4 parliaments agreeing? That's impossible. You can't even get members of the parliament to agree on one thing. And I said, that's actually the hardest part, but we were able to succeed it. We had 4 parliaments, 4 time zones, 4 scheduling systems, and 4 definitions of what confirmed means. The Americans wanted it in writing. The Israelis wanted it yesterday. The Greeks said, we'll be there, which could mean Tuesday or sometime in the spring. And the Cypriots very diplomatically offered to mediate between the other 3 just to pick a date. It took longer to schedule this meeting than some UN resolutions, but we're here. And all 4 countries can agree on a calendar invite. I'm sure and conscious that we can handle the Eastern Mediterranean. The importance and urgency of this meeting revolves around an emerging threat in the wake of the Iranians falling back and receding to their borders. We have the rise of Syria, a jihadist government who is receiving support from a member of NATO. We have allies, non-state actors of the United States, of Greece, of Cyprus, of Israel, the Kurds, the Druze, the Alawis, Christian communities, especially Orthodox Christian communities who have suffered and continue to suffer. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about today, the rights of minorities as it relates to their new presence in a Turkish-dominated Levant. But beyond all the items that the members of Knesset spoke about, and what I think we'll see the members of Congress and members of the Greek and Cypriot parliaments address, and our esteemed experts who are joining us today, is that this is a beginning point. The Middle East Forum has been speaking about these issues for decades, but today I have the privilege as its executive director to initiate this caucus here with these 2 esteemed members of Knesset, and hopefully we'll see parallel caucuses in Parliament, in Congress, and elsewhere. And for the first time, this is a historic meeting because this is the first time that the Knesset has actually hosted 4 parliaments all together in your houses of democratic worship. And I say democratic worship because it's not something to be saying that the expression of your voters' voices to be able to handle this kind of interparliamentary meeting is one that is just a mark for the history book. It is a mark to move forward. We'll hear today from leading experts that will provide their view and analysis of the challenges facing the 3+1 cooperation and also the benefits of being able to focus with all these countries coming together in this very important strategic gateway to the Middle East. We also have major worldwide cooperation in terms of the media outlets that are covering this event, from US, Europe, Middle East, and more. But I think more importantly than just the media or the members of Parliament and the members of Knesset and Congress who are here today is those members of Congressional staff, Parliament staff, members of the Knesset staff, who will do the spade work in trying to make these ideas, turn them into policy, and also try to get the legislation, including some members of Congress's legislation, which is now sitting on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, and also some other major legislative initiatives, which may be tackled in this Knesset, and if not this one, then the next. So thank you again for coming today. Thank you to members of our board, members of our executive committee, our fellows, including one we have here, Kairidis Nolnitzer, and also to everyone else who will be joining in from home today. I hope we have a great event.
Thank you so much, Greg. And now, Lian Polak-David, co-founder of the Coalition for Regional Security.
Thank you very much indeed. Distinguished members of different parliaments, colleagues, friends, and partners, thank you for the opportunity to address this important gathering at a very critical moment for our region and for our shared strategic framework. This framework is not just another diplomatic format. It represents a rare alignment of like-minded democratic states in the Eastern Mediterranean and, of course, within the United States around common interests, shared values, and a common vision for stability, prosperity, and security. We should see this as a framework, not just as a framework, but as a strategic asset, one that must be nurtured, expanded, and made even more resilient, and definitely not taken for granted. A key recent achievement has been really the progress in the United States on legislation regarding the IMEC. This progress is urgent because whilst we are discussing IMEC, and IMEC has become almost a buzzword everywhere, everybody's talking about it, but nobody's really grounding it. So, and there are also parallel efforts that are underway to advance alternative routes that would benefit mainly one regional player, and that is Turkey. And that is why we need to be moving fast. We need to be moving from vision to reality on the IMEC. And this means establishing formal mechanisms, policies, legislation, and bringing together government and the private sector to begin to ground this buzzword into a real building block that will be realized. We cannot wait for the perfect conditions to make that happen, and we need the U.S. leadership and this framework to realize it. We also need local implementation and momentum. The principle should be simple. If we build it, everyone else will come along. At the same time, we must be realistic. Without normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, IMEC cannot be truly realized. And this is why U.S. leadership here is indispensable to convene, to reassure, to align all sides around a shared regional vision, and to basically put the right pressure on all sides involved. We must encourage Saudi Arabia not to allow its internal factors or regional tensions to pull it towards alternative alignments that weaken the moderate integration and alliance. And we should also urge the Israeli decision makers to take responsible strategic decisions building on the 20-point Trump framework, halting unilateral actions in the West Bank, and advancing a measured, secure, and credible political horizon for the Palestinians that would unlock regional opportunity and make the IMEC real. But basically, partners, we're now in a position where the Middle East is shaping, and Gaza has now entered into phase 2, with heavy involvement of Turkey in the Board of Peace. You know, Gaza used to be an Iranian proxy. We're now in the risk of it becoming a Muslim Brotherhood proxy. And in this context, it is essential for Greece, Cyprus, and the 3+1 framework to be active participants in shaping what comes next in Gaza and the broader regional order. The role should include, first and foremost, supporting credible demilitarization efforts, but also contributing to reconstruction, helping design sustainable government structures, and promoting de-radicalization education that is critical as a foundation for a potential different future in Gaza. So if we believe in that all moderate and pragmatic regional partners should play a role in Gaza, let's make that into a reality. Gaza is not just an Israeli problem. It's a regional problem. It's an Eastern Mediterranean problem, and we should all play a role. And we in the Israeli Coalition for Regional Security strongly believe in the power of aligning all moderate regional forces together. This is why we believe that the 3+1 framework should also act as a strategic core that connects between Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Morocco, and Bahrain to the broader Abraham Accords framework. These efforts should not operate in isolation from one another, but actually reinforce one another. So in closing, our agenda is clear: to institutionalize the 3+1, to move quickly to make IMEC real, and to ensure meaningful involvement of Cyprus and Greece and wider Europe, of course, in Gaza's phase 2. We cannot allow Gaza to become a Muslim Brotherhood proxy. So let us all have the courage to think big, the discipline to act collectively, and the conviction to build together a stable and prosperous region. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Lian. And the next will be General Yossi Kupperwasser, Director of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security.
Thank you very much. And it's really a pleasure to speak with all these distinguished.
Here's the microphone. Everybody can hear.
Thank you very much. And it's a really pleasure to speak to all these distinguished guests participating in this event. We began speaking about Iran becoming weaker and weaker, which is true. But I think we are rushing too fast forward. Iran is still an important player in the Middle East. And even though we managed to inflict a very heavy damage on Iran in our operation together with the Americans in June, Iran is still capable of doing a lot of damage. And the next stage in dealing with the Iranian threat is going to be much more demanding than what we experienced in June. Because it's not only about hitting nuclear facilities or ballistic missile facilities. What's at stake right now, and the Iranians understand it very well, is the ability of the regime to survive. And that's another level of war. That's why they threaten to go to a regional war. And let's not already forget them once we move our attention to Turkey. And one thing in this respect, from the Turkish point of view, the Turks play a very important role in trying to convince the United States not to act, because they are afraid that if the Iranians are going to lose control of the Islamic regime, lose control of Iran, the entire Middle East is going to become much more pragmatic. And this is a bad development from a Turkish point of view. On top of that, they are worried about immigration from Iran to Turkey, so we have to keep that in mind. But yes, the Turks look at what happened in Iran in the last couple of years, ever since October 7th, and they understand the opportunity, the security opportunity here. Because it's not that they are going to turn Hamas into a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is a part of a Muslim Brotherhood, and once it loses the support of the Iranians, just obviously they are more reliant on the Turkish and the Qatari sponsors of Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East. And that's why the Turks were involved in the last stages of negotiations. And that's why the Turks look for a role in Gaza in the future. And they have a role in the Palestinian arena already. But it's more than that. The Turks took advantage of the fact that Assad fell in Syria, and were the sponsors of Shara when he took control of Syria. And they are trying to take advantage of that in order to promote their interests in Syria as well. Now, what happened in the last couple of years in the Middle East served both as an incentive and as an excuse for the Turks to build a bigger army. And we saw some decisions of the Turkish leadership during those years, especially in the middle of 25 and the beginning of 25, to invest a lot of money and effort in building all kinds of weapons that would enable Turkey come true on its promises to become a regional hegemon, a regional power. The fact that they were trying to build an aircraft carrier, drone carrier, several drone carriers to be exact. The fact that they are building, they're committed to build new capabilities when it comes to missiles and to drones. These are not only weapons necessary in order to protect Turkey against all kinds of threats that it considers as concerns for Turkey, but these are also tools that are supposed to allow Turkey to spread its influence beyond its borders. And we see Turkey involved everywhere. By the way, wherever they go, they see Israel. That frustrates them very much, including the story of Somaliland, and which is worrying the Turks too. But Turks, through the buildup of their military capabilities, are becoming a major power in the Middle East. And the threat of a conflict, a direct conflict between us and the Turks is growing. We see it both in Syria. It might end up, if they manage to, and I think this is not going to happen, but they are trying to bring their forces into Gaza. If they manage to do that, this is going to be something that may lead eventually to some friction between us and them. And as I said, they are everywhere. So it's something that when we look at the future of the eastern basin of the Mediterranean, this is something that can have an impact on them too, on our possibility of confronting the Turks too. So whenever you look at it, Turkey is becoming a bigger and a bigger challenge for Israel militarily, and not only for Israel, of course. We held in the GSS, we just held a seminar on Turkey, and the Turkish representative in the seminar said, look, you don't have to worry. Our problem with you is temporary. Just because we are under the leadership of Erdogan, and you are under the leadership of Netanyahu, this is a personal issue. Our animosity towards the Greek and towards certain elements in Cyprus is something that's going to last forever. So we have to understand that this situation affects our confrontation with Turkey for a longer period of time, and that's why we need to cooperate with everybody else that is concerned about what's going on with Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, General. And we're honored to have here, joining us from Washington, Congressman Randy Fine. Hello, dear friend. It's so good to see you again. I had the pleasure of having you in the Knesset, and I see that you got a promotion since then. So Great seeing you here. Great friend of Israel.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride for me. 1 year ago, I was a member of the Florida legislature. I had just been elected to the Florida State Senate, the higher chamber. We have two chambers in Florida. And now, 2 months after that, I got elected to Congress, and here I am. I actually just stepped out of a hearing we're having. I got put on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. They decided having a Jewish Republican on the Foreign Affairs Committee would be a good idea. I stepped out of that hearing just a couple minutes ago on Syria. So we're having a big discussion about what's going on in Syria, and frankly, part of that discussion is colored by the influence of Turkey right now. The U.S. diplomat that is in charge of what's going on in Syria, Tom Barrack, also has that same role in Turkey. So, so obviously, our government has made a decision that these two areas are very linked. But it's my honor to speak to you all. Thanks for having me to talk about this important subject. 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago, I guess I'm getting old. My wife and I were working in Europe, and we had a weekend where we didn't have anything we had to do. And so we decided that we would spend our weekend in Istanbul, in Turkey, and had an extraordinary weekend in a place that seemed very Western friendly and very friendly to Americans. Had a great weekend. The funny thing is, today in 2026, if I was in Europe working again and I had a free weekend, I don't know that I would feel safe as a Jew, let alone as an American, going to Turkey, because I think the country and certainly the political leadership of the country has fundamentally changed. I think over that period of time to a country, I think, with grand dominations of recreating the empire that used to exist, the Ottoman Empire that existed until about 100 years ago. And so I think that we have seen over the past few years, whether it's rhetoric related to Gaza, whether it's influence as it relates to what's going on in Syria, and in the rest of the world, that Turkey is off the reservation. It's why I have opposed Turkey being able to purchase the F-35. It's one of the reasons that I frankly question the value of NATO at this point, because with friends like that, I'm not really sure why we need enemies. So I know as you all have this discussion today, talking about Turkey's ambitions, the challenges that it's causing, particularly to the north of Israel, but I think it's destabilizing force in the Middle East. It's certainly nowhere near an issue as, say, in Iran, for example, or a Qatar. But I think that it is a challenge where it is sort of chosen to go in a dark direction. The good news is I don't think this is this has to be a permanent thing. I mean, Turkey had a very strong non-religious bent, a very sectarian orientation. It was the name of the country, came out of that. It wasn't driven by sort of Muslim religion. It was more driven just as a nation based on on sectarian values. And I think that's where many of the people who live in the country are oriented. So my hope is down the road that it'll sort of take a U-turn away from the direction that it's gone in and go back to being the kind of place that we thought that we could visit, 20 years ago. So there's my sort of overall thoughts as it relates to Turkey and the area. I don't know if you all have any questions for me that you want to ask them. I'm certainly happy to answer them in the time that we've got, together this morning.
Yeah, so actually, if anyone has questions for the congressman, please feel free.
And you can ask me anything. It doesn't matter.
Great.
Congressman, it's good to see you again. This is Greg Roman, Executive Director of MEF. About 8 months ago, when you were addressing our conference, you talked about the importance of economic connections, not just about who you are and where you came from and really how you put your boots on and you really were able to start your own business and really have a lot of opportunity in Florida. But I think this is an opportunity for America to invest in Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. What are some things that are going on right now in Congress in terms of bolstering the relationship between our three countries here in the Eastern Med and the American backing for it?
Well, it's a great question. Look, I actually am having discussions about this right now with the U.S. Trade Representative about issues relating to, for example, tariffs on Israel. I think it is in the United States' best interest for Israel to have an incredibly strong and vibrant economy. If for no other reason, the stronger the Israeli economy is, the less Israel is dependent on the United States. And that's a winner for Israel. And frankly, that's a winner for the United States. I'm a guy who wants to see how little money our government can spend on anything. And so I think that setting up a world in which American companies on their own voluntarily see incredible investment opportunities, whether it's in Cyprus, whether it's in the United States, that's a winner for everyone. So I think creating a set of frameworks in trade and investment where capital flows can move across borders in a way that's not being driven by government, but it's being driven by self-interest in terms of what is best for companies. That's what I did. That's what the reason I was in Europe 20 years ago is I was building one of my businesses. I wasn't there to have a good time. I had a business opportunity and I went and I took it. Now, I wasn't doing any business in Turkey. I just, like I said, had a weekend and we decided to go there. So there are certain places where if I was an entrepreneur again, which I'm not, there are certain places that I would want to deploy my money. There are certain places that I wouldn't. But one of those factors would be security, private property rights. Do they share the same values as the United States? Can I believe that if I own something, I'm going to actually own it forever? And I think that Americans are not going to be worried about the Israeli government going and confiscating their property, something that we've seen in other places. Many Americans invested billions of dollars in Venezuela, thinking it was a great, safe investment. And then the wrong government comes to power and they take it all away. I would not invest in Turkey today if I was an investor. Doesn't mean I wouldn't down the road, but I think governments matter, policy matters. And so I think the more that we can do to set up American companies to invest, whether it's in Cyprus, whether it's in Israel, I think that's a winner for everyone involved.
Congressman, thank you so much. It's absolute pleasure and honor to have you here with us, and thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys very much. Best of luck.
Thank you. And joining us now is Andy Zeminidis, Executive Director of the Hellenic American Leadership Council. And I apologize.
Good.
I'm sure I haven't pronounced your name.
It's all right. It's close enough. It's
correctly.
Zemanitas. And
Zeminidis.
thank you very much. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you to my colleagues at the Middle East Forum for putting this together. As an American with a father from Cyprus and a mother from Greece, I don't know where I fit into Greg's little distinction before, but I'll take. I figured I thought this event was going to be tomorrow, so I moderated with myself to get to today. But we're at a key moment. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, nobody talked about the Eastern Mediterranean in Washington. It was not a term that was used. And I think to evaluate the last decade and where we go from here, we can do a simple SWOT analysis. And the strengths start with what Congress has done. We are now on our third piece of legislation on the Eastern Mediterranean. In 2019, you had the landmark Eastern Mediterranean Security and Energy Partnership Act. In 2021, you had EastMed Act 2. That was because of the Greek bicentennial called the U.S.-Greece Defense and Interparliamentary Partnership Act. That's where the 3+1 Interparliamentary Partnership Caucus was built. And now we have the EastMed Gateway Act. We have Greek Americans and American Jews working together, cooperating, advocating all over the country together. That's a strength. And we have to build on that strength. There is a weakness, though. There's a weakness that's peculiar to this time that we are. There is no administration infrastructure for this 3+1. For the first time, we're looking at no assistant secretary of state, either for Europe or Near East affairs. As we look at how the 3+1 evolved over the years, you had assistant secretaries of state like Wes Mitchell during President Trump's first term, who led. You had a Secretary of State who actually launched the 3+1, Mike Pompeo in Jerusalem. We don't have that high-level administration engagement on the 3+1 that we need. That brings us to an opportunity. And since we have members of Congress and members of Parliament and members of the Knesset, I think legislators have to step into this void. They're the ones who stepped into it. When the 3+1 started, or when the Israel, Greece, Cyprus trilateral really took off in Washington, let's remember that it was on the back end of President Obama still talking more to Erdogan than he did to any other world leader. And Congress did not like that. And Congress formed the first regional caucus, the Congressional Hellenic Israel Alliance Caucus. Now we have this all over. And we're lucky, as I see the Member of Parliament Dimitris Kairidis on too. We have parliamentarians who were ministers during that time, Minister Kairidis and the rest. And the threat is certainly Turkey. There are people who are clear-eyed about that threat. Representative Schneider, who is leading this legislative effort, who was there at the very beginning when CHIO was formed. He was one of the original co-sponsors of the first legislation. We're very lucky to have his leadership, his and Congressman Bilirakis. But Representative Schneider sees this clear-eyed. He's opposed the F-35s. And we have to address this lack of infrastructure. Congress and the parliament have to step into the void, because right now, if there's a crisis, we may be left in the hands of Ambassador Tom Barrack. And I think that's a dangerous place for all four countries.
Oh. Andy, thank you so much. And I will take this opportunity actually to invite you to come here to the Knesset and to bring your colleagues, and we should continue this conversation. Because it's so important.
I accept. I'll come.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now, Galia Linderstrauss, okay, from a senior research fellow in the Institute for National Security Studies.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. The trilateral relationship established between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus in 2016 has demonstrated, in my mind, a remarkable consistency and productivity. The addition of the U.S. during the first term to the mechanism has strengthened it even further. This 3+1 framework has provided the necessary diplomatic weight and security guarantees to transform regional visions into tangible geopolitical plans. I'd like to use my short presentation to discuss with you the issues of trade and energy that already MK Tal has raised. In a historical shift, Israel's 2025 mutual trade with Greece, estimated at $1.4 billion, is perhaps now greater than its trade with Turkey. If you include Cyprus, the transition is even more undeniable. This marks a collapse from the $5.7 billion in mutual trade between Israel and Turkey seen in 2023, a collapse triggered by Turkey's decision in May 2024 to implement a full embargo on Israel. While transit through third countries exists, the formal economic bound has been severed. This is the critical turning point. Since Erdogan's rise to power, trade has been a stabilizer, the oxygen, if you want, that kept the Israel-Turkey relationship alive during past crises. At least till now, however, not even after the October ceasefire and the Trump 20-point plans has Turkey resumed trade with Israel. As the trade door with Turkey closes, the energy window with Greece and Cyprus must open wider. This brings us to the Great Sea Interconnector. Unlike the East Med pipeline, which many viewed as an overreach, the Great Sea Interconnector is a very pragmatic solution for the modern energy needs. As energy security and grid backup move to the forefront of the global agenda, this project provides a flexible platform. Cyprus is the only EU member without a grid backup, and Israel is also an electricity island. By decoupling the interconnector from a specific fuel source, it paves a clear path for the transition to green energies for many years to come. Strategic infrastructure like the Great Sea Interconnector cannot be held hostage by Turkish revisionist easy claims in the Eastern Mediterranean. RIP backup is a fundamental pillar of energy security. It's a basic necessity, not a luxury. The US must signal clearly to Ankara that the stability of the regional energy and architecture is a red line, with no concessions will be made. The developments in the Eastern Mediterranean are often framed as a zero-sum game, but this perspective is not inevitable, as M.K. Schuster emphasized. While the region discovered gas reserves are modest on a global scale, they hold significant strategic values for the countries surrounding the basin. Exploring cooperative solutions, such as channeling Cypriot gas through Israel or Egypt to the Arab gas pipeline to supply Syria, could create mutual benefits. If such an arrangement contributes to Syria's stabilization, even Turkey could stand to gain from a more secure and economically interconnected neighborhoods. The Gaza ceasefire and the transition into the second phase of Trump 20-point plans provides a critical opening to reinvigorate the East Med Gas Forum, the EMGF, at the public level. In a region historically lacking robust multilateral frameworks, this unique organization is too valuable to neglect, especially given its quiet, stabilizing role following the events of October 7th. Furthermore, with the EMGF headquartered in Cairo and recent substantial warming of Turkish-Egyptian relations, this forum is well positioned to serve as a vehicle for de-escalating broader Eastern Mediterranean tension. In the Eastern Mediterranean, energy and trade are not just commodities. They are a primary currency of regional strategy. While states are understandably protective of their sovereignty, the region's gas discoveries have sparked a new level of imaginative, constructive thinking, most notably within the 3+1 mechanism. U.S. diplomacy, as mentioned already, remains the indispensable catalyst for this process. By leveraging the current high in U.S.-Turkish relations, Washington has a unique window to guide Ankara to a more collaborative path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalia. And now Yonatan Adiri, geopolitical expert and former advisor to President Shimon Peres.
Thank you very much, Member Knesset. It's funny that you mentioned that piece. In actually 2009, they had the doubtful, privilege to be there in Davos when President Erdogan at the time, demonstrated his loathing to the state of Israel in very, very certain terms. That, I think, turn at the time signaled something that was far more profound than we had anticipated at the time. We are looking now almost 20 years back into what I think is a very fundamental shift in Turkey's regional dynamics. I think that the playbook is very clear. Turkey started it in Libya. You put on the ground where nobody else wants to. You take control over energy assets that are critical for Europe. You then protect Europe from refugees, for which now Turkey is earning billions of dollars per year. This is a moral abomination whereby Europe pays an effective ransom to Turkey to prevent refugees from reaching European soil, and then replicate it in Somalia. We immediately then go to the EEZ. We have just been informed that Turkey is going to explore via its nation-owned, state-owned companies the new oil findings off the shore of Somalia, and therefore, General Kuperwasser, as you've mentioned, they are not happy with Israel's new position in Somaliland. This playbook is now being expanded. Dr. Linderstrauss, you'd mentioned the visit last week of President Erdogan in Egypt, where we have learned Egypt actually holds a Turkish drone base active for the proxies in Sudan and North Africa. So I think the playbook is very clear. When it comes to our partners in the 3+1, the concept of Mavi Vatan, the notion that Turkey somehow controls its blue homeland, blue water homeland, with no real legal grounding, is destructive to energy cooperation. It is destructive to data cooperation, and therefore I think it is very clear where we are. I would say, and I'd highly recommend a read of Stoltenberg's last book, ex-head of NATO, published a couple of months ago, and the episodes in which he describes his battles with Erdogan. I think it's very clear he opens the door into sort of those dynamics for those of us who haven't seen those up closely. The big challenge in my mind when it comes to the American administration is, first and foremost, to uphold the CAA TSA sanctions, the Kata sanctions that were applied on Turkey and is now actually within a diplomatic effort trying to lift those. Those depend on Congress. They depend on the House of Representatives, and I hope that this remains in place. When it comes to the 3+1, I think from the Israeli perspective, the broader regional dynamics could be viewed as what I can refer to as a diamond architecture. Eastwards is India, northward is Azerbaijan, west is Cyprus and Greece, and an incredible feat of collaboration that we're seeing in the last couple of months, being outspoken about this, and south in Ethiopia and Somaliland in the Horn of Africa. That diamond architecture is how Israel should view its future, with the UAE as its core partner en route to New Delhi. In this context, the partnership of the 3+1 is critical. It is not transactional. It is not ephemeral. It is not here to last a couple of months until Turkey sort of comes back. It is part of a broader architecture, this diamond type of shape, where Azerbaijan in the north, Ethiopia, New Delhi, and the Hellenic partnership. In this context, we will have, if everything works well, Prime Minister Modi here in Israel in a number of weeks, which is, again, a vote of confidence that the eastern flank of the partnership sees Israel, a 1.4 billion people population, as a critical piece in the regional dynamics. I'd like to finish off with kind of pointing out to the dynamic, and Leanne mentioned that early on, and I totally agree with that, but maybe a broader scope on that. We've seen Saudi Arabia step away, not just from normalization with Israel. We've seen Saudi Arabia outside of the Palestinian context, and I actually challenge that point that it has a lot to do with the Palestinian context. It is a result and a consequence of challenges within Saudi Arabia internally, the challenges of reaching Vision 2030. We have seen Mohammed bin Salman really, I would say, almost violently behaving towards MBZ, the president of the Arab Emirates. This is a sign for concern. It should be a sign of concern for Washington. It should be a sign of concern for us, for the realization of IMAC outside of the Palestinian issue, outside of any other issue. It seems like Saudi Arabia has taken a turn. They tried to make a partnership with Pakistan and Turkey. Turkey sort of stepped away, which is an interesting sign. But just to kind of conclude with that, IMAC is critical. Saudi normalization is critical. I think before we talk Palestine, before we talk reintegration of the Palestinian issue, let's take a look at what's going on between Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and learn very closely. Stand by our ally to the Abraham Accord, support it as it's making its shift towards northern energy routes, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Europe, and pay attention, close attention to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And, we've just heard from Senator Lindsey Graham, his frustration towards Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
And other perspectives, but also, I think it's also part of that.
Yep.
And next, we are joined and honored to be joined by a member of the Parliament of Greece, Dimitris Kairidis, head of the NATO delegation. Hello, sir, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. I can see the beautiful background that you have there.
Right. I managed to have that. Sure. I am here in front of the Parliament in Athens. I am delighted to join you, and I thank you very much for the invitation. It's a wonderful meeting, and a lot of important things have been said. Let me be as concise and brief as possible, being the vice chair of the Hellenic Parliament's Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defense, the head of the Greek delegation of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and several other hats. First, in order to be of value to our friends and partners, we needed to put our house in order, and I can report to you from Athens that my country, Greece, is back and has achieved a remarkable recovery from the depths of a severe economic crisis some 10 years ago. And I will only share two numbers to show with pride that progress. Greece no longer has the highest unemployment rate in Europe. It's right now close to 7% from 18% just a few years ago. There are other countries like France, Sweden, and Finland, and Spain, of course, with much higher rates. And Greece has the world record in reducing public debt from 180% to less than 130 by the end of this year. And soon enough, it will not be the country with the highest debt in Europe. There will be several others that will surpass us if the current trend continues. So Greece is much more dynamic today and much more extrovert and credible as a partner than it was before. Second, I would say that there hasn't been, and I am a student of Greek foreign policy. I'm a professor in the university originally before my life in politics, and I have studied Greek foreign policy for a very long time. I would say that
We've lost the connection. Okay, so I hope we will have you back. But until then, so we will go Member of Parliament, Harris Georgiades. I'm sure I haven't pronounced your name correctly.
Well, it's good enough. It's Georgiades.
Georgiades.
Yes,
Okay. Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, thank you, and such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and thank you for taking the initiative for this very important and timely discussion. I mean, please free to interrupt me if Dimitris Kairidis comes back on the line. But in the meantime, allow me to share a few thoughts. And first of all, let me say that the East Med matters and cannot be ignored. It is a geopolitically very important region, which can either breed tensions and conflict, or it may create opportunities for cooperation. It could be a region full of failed states, with threats to global security, with disruption of maritime routes, with intense migration flows, or it could become a region of security, stability, full of investment opportunities on energy, on infrastructure, well, everywhere basically. And the point I want to make is that the direction it will take, the positive one or the adverse one, will depend, among others, on the collaboration between the three liberal democracies of the region, and crucially, on the continued engagement of the United States. This is the essence of the 3+1 partnership. It is not a partnership which is directed against anyone, but it is a partnership which is serving our very important common interests and common security concerns. Point number 2, Turkey. We cannot continue to pretend that Turkey is a credible and trustworthy partner in this regional network of security and collaboration if it ever were. Gradually, over the last 20 or so years, Turkey has undergone a very significant transformation for the worse. Secularism and a seemingly Western orientation have given way to a dangerous mix of authoritarianism, Islamism, and the nationalism. And I will argue that this transformation cannot be attributed entirely to Erdogan and cannot be expected to go away with Erdogan. Erdogan's role has been very significant, but this has not been a top-down transformation. It's the opposite. Erdogan may have exploited this transformation for to promote his political agenda. He has given voice to it, but it has been a deep transformation of Turkish society and Turkish politics, which has now influenced all pillars of the Turkish state, including previously traditional secular pillars, as is the Turkish military. And obviously, this transformation has major spillover effects on Turkish foreign policy. And I do believe that it is plainly obvious that Turkish foreign policy objectives diverge from US objectives and, generally speaking, from Western interests. Turkey has been a supporter of Hamas and Hezbollah. It is supporting forces in Syria, which are a manifestation of the most extreme form of Islamist power, and it's obvious that it is supporting the Iranian regime at a time when the people of Iran are bravely standing up against the Islamist regime of that country. Turkey is interested in regional hegemony, and Israel, Greece, and Cyprus are in the way. And we are witnessing this on a number of examples. I did hear the very correct references a few minutes ago on energy cooperation, and especially the energy interconnector, this grid network between Israel, Cyprus, Greece, and through Greece with mainland Europe. Turkey is openly preventing the implementation of this very significant energy project, not hesitating to project military and naval power. So again, my point, we cannot pretend not to see when it comes to Turkey. And the final point on Cyprus, because I do believe that there has been a kind of a political transformation in Cyprus as well over the last decades. Our history was such that our political direction was not always aligned with the West, not always aligned with Europe and Israel. For some years in our early period of independence, we were nurturing ties with the non-aligned movement. This belongs to history. I can tell you that across the political spectrum and across society, there is very strong, deep-rooted support in favor of our collaboration. A poll earlier, last week actually, showed that 7 in 10 Cypriots are strongly supporting the Israel-Greece-Cyprus collaboration. 4 in 10 were considering Israel to be the best partner on security, even higher than Greece, with the United States following. So the people of Cyprus, the society of Cyprus, and the political system of Cyprus is now, and over successive governments, fully aligned in this direction and eager to ensure that Cyprus has a role, that it demonstrates a commitment in favor of promoting our common interests and our security. Thank you once again for this opportunity, and I hope that we further opportunities for discussion among us will emerge.
Thank you so much for these important words. Thank you so much. And I understand that Member of Parliament Kairidis is back with its beautiful background.
Yes, I am back, and I'm sorry about this disruption. And complimenting what Haris, my dear friend Haris from Cyprus, just said, and it is his name day today. So happy name day, Haris. I would say that
Can you explain to us here in Israel what's a name day?
A name
Birthday?
day is no, it's not the birthday. It's something more important in our Orthodox religion, Christian religion, is the saint or that whose name we carry. So there is the Saint Dimitris name, my name, for example. Today is the Saint Haralambos name. Haris is his name, so it's his name day. And a lot of Haris around the Greek world celebrate their name day. It's a much more public event than birthday. Birthday is a bit American for us, and
that's not
private.
We are here to strengthen the alliance between all the countries, so we're in all the parties.
But you understand the deep roots. You are a nation of deep roots. So let me say that the biggest change in Greek foreign policy the last few years has been the strategic partnership with Israel. And this change is nowhere more evident than the Cyprus-Israeli connection Mr. Georgiades just spoke about. Greece was traditionally very reluctant, as you know, vis-a-vis Israel. But a lot has changed the last 30 years, and especially the last 15 years, with the help of our Greek-American friends like Andy Zemenidis, and the work that the Israeli and Greek friends, pro-Israeli and pro-Greek friends in Congress have done. So here we are, and 1 million Israeli tourists come to Greece every year. Trade is booming. A lot of Israeli investment in real estate in Greece, but not only, even in critical infrastructure. Some of the most important defense industries have been bought by Israelis, and we are very happy about this partnership when it comes to armaments. The third thing I would say is that I am very encouraged by my Florida congressman colleague, if I may say so, in his clear-eyed view on Turkey. I wish we had people like him in European parliaments. And I say this with a lot of frustration because I visit a lot, I travel a lot, I speak with my European colleagues, where they have a very vague and conflicting and confusing view of Turkey, because we are not talking about something temporary, as another Turkish colleague somewhere was mentioned. I think what has happened in Turkey is much more permanent, and we are looking at a permanent shift of Turkey, both internally, with the lifting of any institutional barriers to Erdogan's authoritarianism, and abroad, fueled by the economic progress of Turkey and the very real and very strong regional ambitions of Turkey. We give a fight in Greece to convince our European partners of the dangers. And now that European security architecture is in the making, and we live very fertile moments where Europe is start spending money on defense and emancipating itself because of all the transatlantic situations, to make sure that Turkey is kept at a distance and partners with Europe under very strict conditions and regulations. And finally, I would say that we need to institutionalize our 3+1 forum. Here in Greece, we are ready. We have a very committed group of very prominent parliamentarians, former foreign ministers, former prime ministers, Dora Bakoyanni, George Papandreou, and others who have formed the group, and we are ready to institutionalize it together with Haris from the House of Representatives in Cyprus, from the Knesset. I was the head of the Israeli Greek caucus, friendship group in the Greek parliament, and I have visited Knesset several times, and I hope we can do that again within the framework of the 3+1. Please make sure that you involve us, include us, and I will be very, very happy to participate. Congratulations for this very substantive meeting, and all the best from Athens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I will definitely be more than happy to take your offer and to have this meeting between all the members of parliament from the 3+1 countries. But I think maybe because I see the parliament, your parliament is a bit nicer than the Knesset, then I would think that you should invite us to come to you.
For sure, that will be the best. We can arrange, so we'll be in touch.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now we're joined by Representative Brad Schneider, especially promoting the Eastern Mediterranean Getaway Act. And thank you so much for doing that and for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm excited to be here. I want to thank my colleagues in the Knesset and our partners from Greece and Cyprus. I want to extend a special greeting to my dear friend and fellow Illinois resident, Andy Zemanidis. It's good to see you on camera, better in person. And I'm excited to be here. It's an honor to join you today. I'm reminded of my first visit to Israel a long time ago in 1983, after graduating college. And never in my dreams could I have imagined that 43 years later, I'd be speaking with Knesset colleagues and colleagues from Greece and Cyprus as a member of the United States Congress. And we're here in particular to talk about the power of the 3+1 framework, the importance of this framework, and the ability, I'll put it even stronger, the responsibility we have to strengthen cooperation. I found a quote by Shimon Peres that I thought is relevant here, because he said, "We may soon find that peace is made possible not through negotiation, but through innovation." And I think what we are talking about here is the need for innovation looking forward. Looking back 3 years ago as co-chair of the U.S. Congress Abraham Accords Caucus, I was focused on two main ideas. First, how do we bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords? And second, how do we prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? We got tantalizingly close on the Saudi front. Discussions advanced on civilian nuclear cooperation, mutual defense, and meaningful progress on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. On Iran, for years, I've worked across the aisle with then Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Michael McCall, and before him, Chairs Meeks, Engel, and Royce, to do everything we could to communicate clearly and credibly that we will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Then came the barbaric attacks of October 7th. Thousands of highly trained Iran-backed Hamas fighters invaded Israel, breaking through a border that was at best poorly defended, followed by a response that was too often slow and uncoordinated. More than 1,100 people were slaughtered, including many American citizens, and 250 taken hostage. Among them, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, whose parents are from Chicago, and many of his relatives are not just my friends, they're my constituents. I'm hopeful that Israel's government will reckon with the choices it made in the lead up to October 7th, as well as the response in the wake of the attack. I mentioned earlier 1983. This past Sunday was the 43rd anniversary of the release of the Kahan Commission report, released on February 8th, 1983. Personally, I consider it to be one of the most important self-assessments a government has ever conducted. As a Jew and a member of Congress, I can only hope that a similar independent, comprehensive, honest assessment will soon happen for October 7th. As an American, I'm also proud and grateful for the immediate response of the U.S. and our allies to the October 7th attack. From President Biden sending 2 carrier strike groups to the region and being the first U.S. president to visit Israel in wartime, to the conclusion and bringing home of the final 20 remaining living hostages, and just recently, every single last hostage, as they should have been, with thanks to President Trump. The Greeks and the Cypriots also demonstrated the value of the 3+1 format, serving as a crucial staging ground for operations in the region. As we look forward to a more stable and secure day after that offers hope to all, we must be clear-eyed about who are our friends of Israel and who are the promoters of peace and a better future for everyone in this most important region, and who are the enemies of peace seeking Israel's destructions.
who are clearing obstacles, building bridges, and seeking breakthroughs, and who are putting up obstacles and sowing division. Of course, Iran and its proxies are the main enemies of peace, which is why we must do everything we can to counter them. But we need to also recognize that people like Ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, through their words and more importantly, their actions, are undermining the prospects of a real and lasting peace for Israel and the region. Equally so, by at best ignoring and at worst condoning violence in the West Bank and wantonly expanding settlement areas, Israel is creating unhelpful obstacles to advancing its own interests and the interests of the region. As I've said before, terrorism, irrespective of whether it's perpetrated by Palestinians or Israelis, is a threat to the peace we all seek. I still, to my core, believe in the prospect for regional stability and peace, built on economic, cultural, and security integration. I remain committed to frameworks such as the Abraham Accords, the I2U2, IMEC, and as important as any, the 3+1 framework. That's why I was so proud to introduce the Eastern Mediterranean Gateway Act, which has been strongly supported in Washington by Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, and to see it advanced overwhelmingly by the Committee on Foreign Affairs. This legislation pushes our Secretary of State to institutionalize multilateral strategic dialogues between the U.S. and the IMEC countries, including Israel, Greece, and Cyprus, with a particular focus on energy security and defense cooperation. The bill also sees the ironclad U.S.-Israel relationship as a model for the region. It tasks our diplomats to study how we can build on our bilateral programs with Israel to duplicate them with other partners and even expand them into multilateral programs for the region. In fact, I see the 3+1 framework as critical to the success of the IMEC. It is building a future in which we escape the gravity of history and remember, borrowing a phrase from my friend Tal Becker, that Israelis and Palestinians, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, all belong to the same land. That by working with each other, we can lift people up, we can lift the land up, and we can lift the prospects for peace. We get to that future by finding creative ways to stand up to our enemies, to sideline the enemies of peace, and to build formats like the 3+1 that allow regional integration, cooperation, and innovation. That's how we secure our nations, our partnership, and the future. I refuse to give up on this future, and I will keep fighting with every fiber of my being to make it real and to strengthen the relationships our countries share.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I just must tell you that I know we're sitting here also members of Knesset from coalition and opposition. We are very united. I believe I'm speaking for both of us when I say that Israel desires peace more than anything else. But in order to achieve peace, we also have to recognize our enemies, and we have to stand up against them. That's the only way to actually also achieve peace. But I accept everything else that you just said, and thank you so much for that.
My step for winning the enemies is not to declare you as an enemy.
It's not to declare.
You are not my enemy.
Quite. And our last speaker for tonight here and for this morning in America is Sarit Zehavi. Are you here with us? Yes. So Sarit, a Lieutenant Colonel, founder and president of the Alma Research and Education Center. Thank you for joining us.
So thank you. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm very excited from this event. I think this is a very important event. I'm speaking to you from the Alma Center. We are based up north, 9 kilometers from the Israeli-Lebanese border. And I'm an expert for the Israeli security challenges on the northern borders. And I want to speak to you today from actually 2 points of view. One is my experience in the army. I was watching Erdogan very closely when he just came to power more than 20 years ago in Turkey and became the prime minister. And I will say a few words about that. And second, from my experience here as the president of the Alma Center and our research about Syria and specifically the Turkish involvement in our neighboring country in Syria. So I just want to give you 2 examples to the question of who is Erdogan. And one quotation is Erdogan speaking to his own party in October 25, 2023, few weeks after the massacre of October 7. And he said, Hamas is not a terrorist organization. It is a liberation and a Mujahideen group fighting to protect their lands and their citizens. In another event of Eid al-Fitr ceremony in March 2025, he actually said, he prayed to the Lord to destroy and devastate the Zionist Israel. And these are just two quotations out of many that he provided us in the past few years that can exemplify who he is. He grew up on the education of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is who he is. This is in his DNA, and this is what he believes in. And when he actually, when he came to power, he wanted to establish an Islamist Syria to completely change it and to go completely against the legacy of the secular Ataturk. He succeeded in this, and he got rid of all the checks and balances that Ataturk created for the future of Syria, whether in the Syrian army or in the Presidential Council. In 1999, Erdogan sat in jail due to secular legislation in Syria that was cancelled since then. Since he read a song, an Islamist song in public, and the words of this song was, "The mosques are our bases, the domes of the mosques are our helmets, and the minarets, the towers of the mosques are our swords, the believers are our soldiers." And you can take this to any direction you want. Erdogan is motivated by a strong ideology. This is, as I've said, from its early experience as a politician and a leader in Turkey. And today, since he became very strong in Syria, he's trying to position himself as the next emperor, Ottoman Empire, but not by a fight, but more by using soft power and creating more areas of influence, such as Syria. And here I'm getting to the issue of Syria with a few words. There is a clear military involvement of Syria, of Turkey in Syria, including areas that are under the control of Turkey, next to the border with Syria, in Syria itself. And there is a clear interest of Syria to push away any Kurdish control of those areas next to the border between Syria and Turkey. Erdogan is the sponsor of Ahmed al-Shara, which is another personality that we will not now discuss. They agree upon this ideology that I mentioned of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Turkey today is involved in the rehabilitation of Syria, in training of the Syrian army, in providing weapons, including area defense systems to Syria, in logistics to the Syrian army, in building positions in Syria, and also involved in the training and the refounding and establishing of the security institutions of the new Syria. Some of the civilian assistance that Turkey provides to Syria today can be used also for military purposes. In the maritime field, you can also find involvement of Turkey in building the maritime capability of Syria as part of the rehabilitation of its military forces. And this connection can assist Syria with regard to supply lines and control of its maritime area. Again, it looks like a positive development because Syria is a failed state after 15 years of a civil war, but actually it's a negative development because they are both leading Erdogan and Ahmed al-Shara, a radical ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I want to give you one example. We did a report about a building of a net of schools in Syria that are adhering to the Al-Qaeda ideology, a net of schools of the HTS, of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And Turkey was involved in the sponsoring and founding those schools when Ahmed al-Shara just started to establish them in northern Syria, in Idlib, when he controlled there. In the past year, these NATO schools doubled the amount of elementary schools they have, and now they have 70 schools all across Syria. In the Alma Center, we reported recently on an involvement of the IHH, which is a terrorist group designated in Israel, Germany, and the Netherlands in southern Syria, distribution of humanitarian aid of this Turkish organization. And unfortunately, it is not designated in the United States as a terrorist organization. This is very important because, as we all learned in the past few years, distribution of humanitarian aid means control. Wherever you distribute humanitarian aid, you gain control. And we are seeing them on the border, next to the border with Israel. To conclude, I want to say maybe something surprising after all the negative presentation that I gave here. I think that even though, everything I've just said, Israel, of course, doesn't have any interest for a conflict with Turkey, and the fact that Turkey is a member of NATO could be an advantage and not a disadvantage. It is always a question of how do we promote that and how do we use that? Because as a member of NATO, it should follow the interests of NATO. It cannot go against the interests of NATO. And I think NATO is a leverage of influence to try to take Turkey to better directions and to minimize the negative influence that we have today of Turkey on the region, and especially in Syria.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarit. Thank you so much. And everybody else who wants to add anything, that now is the time. Greg?
Yeah, I think that there's some examples of cooperation beyond just energy and trade and commerce and on religious matters, which are currently not really spoken about with the not just parliaments, but also just the Israeli, Greek, Cypriot, and American people that they should be aware of, especially how these countries, which are not in a formal alliance with Israel, but are contributing to Israeli security without many not knowing about it. For instance, every humanitarian aid shipment, which is going to Ashdod, is actually trained by individuals who are in Cyprus at the Cypriot Land, Open Seas, and Port Security Training Complex, which is otherwise known as Cyclops. So we have a Cypriot organization which has Greek expertise, which is behind it, Hellenic expertise, which is behind it, American funding, which goes to being able to help with the port security, and a net security benefit for Israel with dealing with Gaza. And the Greek Air Force Academy actually has one of its main contractors, I believe, being Elbit, where we now have Israeli fighter pilots with a lot of experience, unfortunately, over the past 2 years, now teaching Greek fighter pilots how to conduct sorties against the Turks. Not necessarily one-on-one, but they get pretty close sometimes when the Turks violate Greek airspace. So there's a lot of examples which are smaller, let's call them tactical considerations, but I think are of import. And there's a lot of building blocks there from which to build. We heard about the Israeli real estate investors in Greece. We know we have family just on our side from Hod Sharon, where my family lives, of many individuals going to school in Cyprus. So, Cyprus and Greece are becoming a new southeast door for Israelis to enter cooperation with European Union countries. But at the same time, these European Union countries are benefiting from Israeli security know-how. And the U.S. is really the glue that's keeping everything together. So
maybe the Messiah will come when the people from Cyprus and Greece will invest here in Israel, and by end will move to here. I will summarize this way. We're talking about 3+1, so the one is the one and only, and we really want America to be great again and to be very influenced here in this region and to bring us peace and stability and prosperity. But we should remember that United States it's a new country.
20 years only.
Also a new language they speak, and here when we come to the eastern part of the Mediterranean, we're talking about 2 or 3 nations that for at least 4 or 3 to 4 millenniums are speaking almost the same language of the Hebrew and the Greek. And
we had ups and downs.
for sure. And in the first millennium before Christ, we had a very intensive economic relationship, and some very important cultural impacts, and I would say that we don't want to expect to a new a new invention of the what we call the Gentiles of the sea, the people that come from the island of the Mediterranean that became to know as Philistines, not the Palestinians, but the ancient. But then the last time that the Greek army arrived to here, it was in order to kick off the Persians from here. Remember, 2003, 100 years ago. We don't want to the future to or the history to come back. We need to be united. We should, under the leadership of the United States, we should work together for the stability, for the security, and for the prosperity of this region. And I really hope that we will be able to be strong enough to avoid from our common enemies to do what they want to do. But I really want this caucus will be focused and other efforts, of course, in the good things that we should do in Hebrew, in Greek, and in English the next decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. I will just conclude and say that Congressman Wendy Fine spoke about the hope that we still have to see Turkey going back to be a secular democracy. Hope, pray, I don't know exactly, but I think until then, we definitely have to make sure that we will strengthen the alliance and the cooperation between these three plus one countries who are fighting against the same forces and against the same threats and sharing the same values and interests. And I hope that this is launching this caucus here today will help facilitate and support this moving in the right direction. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you so much. Toda raba.
And thank you to the host. Thank you very much.
And I just want to also thank our staff who helped put this together, Ben Baird in Washington and Alex Selsky here in Jerusalem. And I also just have one more thought, which I think both of you will appreciate, which is the following. My wife was asking me last night, do you think that today is going to be a success? And I said, well, we've been able to get all these experts together, members of parliament. We've been able to get the media to watch, our supporters at home. But I think that, frankly, it's the audience that we didn't identify that's watching. Those in Tehran, Istanbul, and Moscow that should realize that there is a new alliance in this theater of the world, and they should be on alert because we're not going to put up with their influence activities, asymmetrical warfare, or threats to any of our nation's security. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Toda raba.